Along the golden banks of the mighty Nile, where the waters mirrored the crimson glow of the setting sun, lived a young scribe named Nefertiti. Unlike most women of her time, who rarely gained access to the guarded secrets of the temples, she had earned a rare place among the priests because of her unusual intelligence and her gift for recording sacred symbols with flawless precision. Yet within her dwelled the weight of a divided heart, torn between her devotion to the gods and an unrelenting curiosity that compelled her to question the teachings she was given. The Temple of Dendera, with its massive columns carved with hieroglyphs, recounting the tales of gods and pharaohs, rose like a sanctuary between the desert sands and the starry sky. By day, it echoed with the chants of priests, the fragrance of burning myrrh offered in devotion, and the rhythmic sound of sandals upon polished stone. But it was at night that the true mystery unfolded. On the rooftop, when silence replaced the murmur of the faithful, the temple became a bridge between earth and the cosmos. Nefertiti would spend countless hours above, papyrus in hand, patiently, tracing the movement of the constellations. The warm desert wind brushed against her hair, and her eyes followed the path of the stars as though watching an eternal dance. To her, they were not merely shining points scattered across the heavens. Each star seemed to carry a hidden message, a story waiting to be unveiled. And within her grew the certainty that the universe held secrets meant only for a chosen few. The priests revered certain stars, and Nefertiti had learned their names since childhood. Orion, the eternal hunter; Cassiopeia, the queen of the sky; Sirius, the brightest star, herald of the Nile's flood; the great bear guiding travelers across vast distances; and the swan, its luminous wings unfolding across the night. Each constellation bore its own meaning, and every night seemed to renew the invisible covenant between men and the divine. Yet on this summer night, something was different. The air felt heavier, charged as though with an unseen electricity. On the horizon, Sirius shone with an intensity rarely seen, illuminating the heavens like a divine beacon. As she traced her symbols onto the papyrus, Nefertiti noticed a phenomenon that stole the breath from her chest. A golden light began to move among the hieroglyphs carved into the temple's ceiling. It was not the flicker of torches, nor the ordinary brilliance of stars. This light drifted gently, as though it carried its own will, like a breath descending from the heavens to touch the earth. Her fingers trembled upon the papyrus, and for an instant fear gripped her. Not fear of an outward force, but of what this might mean for her life. Was it a sign from the gods, or a forbidden riddle reserved for only the wisest? Within her heart, reverence for tradition clashed with the fiery spark of discovery. Something whispered to her that this vision was no mere phenomenon, but the beginning of a mystery that would forever alter the course of her existence. And so on that night, when the sky seemed to breathe over Dendera, Nefertiti realized she was not simply observing the stars. She was being observed by them. The mysterious light that had appeared on the rooftop seemed to possess a life of its own. Like a golden thread guiding a lost traveler, it led Nefertiti through the silent corridors of the Temple of Dendera. The torches along the walls flickered, gently, casting shadows that danced like ancient spirits. Her heart pounded in her chest. Each step echoed against the stone, as though the temple itself was aware of her presence. The path ended at a door she had never noticed before. Smaller than the others, it was carved with hieroglyphs depicting stars and intertwined serpents. When the golden light dissolved upon the inscription, the stone seemed to yield, revealing a hidden passageway. Inside the secret chamber, the air was thick with incense and mystery. Surrounded by shelves of ancient papyri and walls covered with celestial maps stood Khaemweset, the most revered of the Spey, the celestial watchers. His face appeared as timeless as the stars he studied. A long grey beard framed the vivid glow of his eyes, which sparkled like 2 points of light within the shadows. Noticing the presence of the young scribe, he smiled serenely, as though he had been expecting her. With slow, deliberate movements, he unrolled a papyrus covered with symbols and lines, tracing the paths of the constellations. "Nefertiti," he said, his voice soft as the breeze drifting over the Nile at dawn. "You have been chosen by the stars themselves, A shiver ran down her spine. She could not tell whether it was born of fear or reverence, but something in his words pierced directly into her soul. Since the dawn of time, the sage continued, the ancient Egyptians have sought connection with the night and the day skies. To interpret the movements of the sun, the moon, and the stars has always been more than curiosity. It was survival. The heavens dictate the floods of the Nile, the cycles of life, and even the destiny of mankind. Camwaset guided her to the paintings that covered the chamber walls. The goddess Nut stretched across the expanse in her majesty, her body adorned with stars, arching protectively over her brother Geb, the earth. Under the wavering light of the torches, the scene seemed to stir with life. "Look, child," he whispered, pointing toward the constellations etched upon the walls. "Each star is a story, each alignment a secret. They do not simply shine, they speak. They whisper of the past and grant glimpses of what is yet to come." Nefertiti felt the weight of his words sink into her mind. Her gaze followed the contours of the painting, and for a fleeting moment she thought the stars etched across Nut's body pulsed faintly, as though breathing. The golden light, still lingering within the chamber, flared more brightly, wrapping her in an almost ethereal aura. Nefertiti's heart raced, yet at the same time, an unfamiliar peace embraced her. It was as if she were being acknowledged, as though she belonged to a secret lineage of celestial guardians, chosen not only to observe the heavens, but to understand them. Within her, two forces struggled, the humility of a scribe, aware of her smallness before the gods, and the burning flame of discovery, whispering that her destiny was only just beginning. "What is it that the stars wish to reveal through you?" murmured Camwaset, speaking as much to himself as to her. And in that moment, Nefertiti understood that the night would not simply be another record upon papyrus. It was the beginning of a journey that would lead her to touch the very fabric of the cosmos. Nefertiti's footsteps echoed softly along the narrow staircase that led to the highest terrace of the Temple of Dendera. The silence of the night was broken only by the distant chirping of crickets and the faint whisper of the desert wind. When she reached the top, her eyes widened in wonder at the vastness of the heavens. The Milky Way stretched across the sky in all its glory. A silver river poured into infinity, linking distant horizons as though it were a bridge between worlds. Tapur. Warm air carried with it the delicate fragrance of lotus blossoms drifting upon the Nile, mingled with the denser scent of myrrh burning in the temple braziers. It was as if the atmosphere itself had been prepared for a revelation. The stars gleamed with unusual intensity, pulsing in unison like celestial hearts beating to the rhythm of the universe. At her side, Camwaset raised his wrinkled hand toward the heavens. His deep yet steady voice echoed through the stillness. Our forefathers believed the Milky Way was not merely a path of light, but a divine being. They called it the Celestial River of Nut, the sacred bed upon which souls journey after leaving this world. There, among constellations and eternal brilliance, they sail toward the judgment of the gods and the promise of rebirth. Nefertiti listened, her eyes glistening with emotion. The young scribe who had so often inscribed symbols onto cold, lifeless papyri was now beholding the living essence of those tales. The sky was no longer an object of study, but a text written in fire and eternity. Camwaset turned to her, his eyes reflecting the constellations as if they held fragments of the cosmos within them. "But there is something extraordinary within you, Nefertiti." His voice sounded like an ancient prayer. "During the last conjunction of Venus, the stars spoke your name. You carry in your soul the gift of understanding the celestial tongue, a gift rare and granted to only a few in each generation." Before she could respond, a shooting star streaked across the heavens, leaving behind a golden trail that illuminated both their faces. The brilliance was so intense that for an instant, it seemed Nut herself leaned down from the sky to bless them. Nefertiti's heart raced. A gentle warmth coursed through her body, a magical tingling that raised the hairs on her skin. It felt as though she were being touched by the invisible hands of the stars themselves, as if she were now part of something far greater than she could comprehend. In the depths of her mind, a silent whisper stirred. not in human words, but in vibrations that resonated with her soul. It was like hearing an ancient chant that had always been there, dormant, waiting for the right moment to awaken. She closed her eyes and drew a deep breath, allowing herself to feel both the weight and the lightness of that instant. The Milky Way was not merely a river in the sky, it was a calling. And Nefertiti was beginning to realize that her life, once devoted to recording the stories of gods and kings, was now transforming into something far greater. She herself was becoming part of the story the stars longed to tell. The following morning, as the timid sun rose over the horizon, painting the desert in shades of copper and gold, Khemwaset led Nefertiti beyond the temple walls. Mounted on steady-footed camels, they crossed dunes that rose and fell like the waves of a petrified sea. The dawn wind carried a rare freshness, blending the distant scent of the Nile's banks with the dryness of the endless sand. To Nefertiti, every moment felt like a ritual, the creak of the ropes securing the saddle, the measured rhythm of the camel's gait, the glimmer of sand particles sparkling under the soft morning light. There was a sacred stillness in the desert, as though each dune guarded millennia of forgotten stories. After hours of travel, when the sun had already risen proudly into the sky, the sight before them stole the breath from the young scribe. The pyramids of Giza emerged like eternal colossi, their vertices piercing the heavens, their faces reflecting the golden light like mirrors of the gods. "Look closely, young scribe," said Khemwaset, his deep voice weighted with solemnity. "Our ancestors built these wonders not merely as tombs, but as bridges to the cosmos. Every stone, every angle, was calculated with a precision that even today defies understanding. They are aligned with the pole star, the guardian of the night sky." Nefertiti remained silent. Her heart raced, overwhelmed by a mixture of reverence and awe. The desert wind threaded its way between the ancient stones, whispering like the voices of long-forgotten workers. To her, each block was a testament of faith, discipline, and profound knowledge, a language carved in stone to converse with the stars. At night, Khemwaset continued, his eyes reflecting the grandeur of the monuments, the builders would lift their gaze to the sky. The constellations were their compass, the light of the stars their guide. They built not only for the pharaohs, but so that the earthly world might mirror the divine order of the universe. As the day advanced, the pyramids shifted in color. Beneath the sun, from the pale yellow of midday to the deep gold of dusk, the sky turned shades of rose and purple, as though Nut stretched her celestial body across the earth in a gesture of protection. Nefertiti felt small before such vastness, yet at the same time an essential part of it. It was as if the entire cosmos bent over her spirit, inviting her to grasp mysteries that lay beyond writing, beyond papyri, mysteries inscribed directly into the geometry of the world. And then, as the sun sank into the horizon and the first star appeared in the sky, the mysterious golden light returned. It danced among the pyramids, gliding like an awakened ancestral spirit, circling their peaks and descending gently along their faces, as though silently approving the young scribe's journey of discovery. Nefertiti closed her eyes and drew a deep breath. She felt connected not only to the stones and the desert, but to the generations who had shaped this legacy. The pyramids were not merely monuments, they were eternal books written in stone, aligned with the very heart of the universe. She knew many secrets still lay hidden within them, waiting for the right soul to unveil them. And for the first time, Nefertiti felt certain the stars and the gods were guiding her steps towards something that would change not only her life, but the destiny of all who came after. Returning to the temple of Dendera felt, to Nefertiti, like stepping once more into the very heart of the universe. She carried within herself both the weight and the radiance of recent revelations, as if every step across the desert had reshaped her into someone far beyond the curious scribe, who once only recorded symbols. Now she felt like an apprentice of a sacred science, a guardian of knowledge that had crossed centuries. That night, Khemwaset led her to the temple's secret library, a chamber reserved only for the initiated. The tall walls were covered with inscriptions that shimmered beneath the glow of incense-lit torches. The air was heavy with myrrh and resin, and there was an almost absolute serenity, as though time itself had paused to welcome that moment. At the center of the room, the sage carefully unrolled an ancient papyrus. The tenderness with which his wrinkled hands touched the material revealed that it was not merely a record, but a reliquary of ancestral secrets. Celestial symbols and intricate lines spread across its surface, revealing a wisdom that few dared to decipher. Our sages divided the sky into 36 parts, Hypnotic said, his deep rhythmic voice like the cadence of a sacred chant. Each part was guarded by a star known as a deacon. These 36 stars ruled over time, rising on the eastern horizon every 10 days. Thus the heavens became our calendar, a living clock that followed the journey of the earth. And to complete the cycle, our ancestors added the 5 epigomenal days that belong neither to heaven nor to earth, but to the mystery that lies between them. Nefertiti leaned closer to the papyrus, her eyes wide with wonder. The decans were drawn as small divine figures, each with its own attributes and symbols, as though the firmament itself were inhabited by an invisible court of guardians of time. "Look, Nefertiti," Hypnotic said, pointing to a hieroglyph illuminated by the torchlight. "Sirius, the most beloved star of Egypt. When it appeared before dawn, it announced the flooding of the Nile. It was the sign of life, the promise of fertility for our lands. Its radiance was the certainty that the gods still walked among us." Shiver ran through the young scribe's body. For the first time, she understood that the heavens were not only mystery or contemplation, but a living language, a script that governed the destinies of people and their harvests. And then, as if to confirm that revelation, the mysterious golden light appeared once again. It glided over the open papyrus, making the symbols shimmer as if they were alive. Nefertiti blinked, but for a moment, she felt as though she could see the deacons themselves moving in the sky above her head. 36 stars, marching like cosmic priestesses, each bearing a secret message for humankind. Outside, the temple was embraced by the serenity of the night. The gentle perfume of wild jasmine mingled with the desert's cool air, and the stars sparkled as though they were answering the sage's words. Nefertiti closed her eyes for a moment, surrendering herself to the sound of silence and to the inner vision awakening in her mind. She understood now. To read time in the stars was to decipher the very heart of the gods, and she, still so young, had been chosen to carry this gift. The night felt suspended in time, as if the universe itself had fallen silent to witness that moment. The sky stretched wide and unbroken, a dark mantle embroidered with thousands of luminous points. But it was Orion that reigned supreme, shining, with an almost supernatural brilliance across the southern horizon. On the temple terrace, lit by the gentle flicker of torches swaying in the wind, Hypnotic stepped closer to Nefertiti. His movements were deliberate, like those of someone carrying a secret older than memory, and when his voice finally emerged, it was low, nearly reverent. "To us, Orion is not merely a constellation," whispered the sage, his eyes fixed on the distant radiance. "It is the immortal soul of Osiris, our god of regeneration, sailing eternally upon the celestial waters." As he spoke, Hypnotic seemed to transform. He was no longer just an astronomer before his disciple. He was a guardian of his people's memory, a man who had dedicated his life to deciphering the mysteries of the heavens. With each word, his passion for ancient wisdom burned through, not as a rehearsed speech, but as a flame that had long lived within him. The night air carried the delicate fragrance of lotus flowers, drifting upon the still waters of the sacred lake. Water coursed through stone channels, its gentle murmur like the earth itself breathing. That natural melody blended with the crackle of bronze braziers, from which the rich scent of myrrh rose into the darkness. Everything conspired to turn the night into a ritual of revelation. When Orion rises on the eastern horizon, especially in the winter months, Hypnotic continued, his gaze reflecting starlight, our ancestors believed that Osiris was reborn. It was the sign that life would renew itself, that even death held no absolute power. Nefertiti stood still beside him, a faint shiver coursing through her skin. It was not fear, but the feeling of standing before something vast, greater than her own existence. Since her arrival at the temple, she had learned to honor symbols and myths, but here, beneath this sky, she felt for the first time that the stars were not mere distant lights. They were gateways, mirrors of the divine. Warm breeze brushed her face, carrying the faint echo of priestly chants that still reverberated somewhere within the temple walls. She closed her eyes briefly and drew in a deep breath, absorbing the fragrance of the night, the quiet strength of Khayem-Waset's presence, the weight of that ancient tradition. She felt small, yet also woven into an unseen chain linking kings, sages and priestesses across the centuries. Every star in Orion bears a sacred name, Khayem-Waset went on, his voice solemn. Together they tell the story of death and rebirth, of the eternal cycle that governs both heaven and earth. Nefertiti opened her eyes again, fixing them upon the constellation. For a fleeting moment, it seemed the golden radiance she had once glimpsed returned, pulsing softly around the stars as if creation itself approved the passing of this knowledge. Her mind raced with questions, her soul filled with reverence. What more might the constellations reveal? Those same lights that had always been there, but were only now unveiling their deeper meaning. The night, steeped in silence and mystery, seemed to whisper that more secrets still lay hidden, waiting to be unveiled. Nefertiti's journey through the stars was only beginning, and each step drew her further into the very heart of eternity. The journey began at dusk, when the Nile shimmered with shades of gold and deep purple. The cedarwood bark that carried them was carved with solar symbols, its reflection gliding across the still waters as if it sailed between two worlds. The Sas, earthly, and the mirrored realm of the sacred river. The dip of the oars into the current blended with the distant calls of birds returning to their nests among the papyrus reeds. Nefertiti sat in silence beside Khayem-Waset, absorbing every detail of the landscape. Fertile fields stretched along the riverbanks like green tapestries, dotted with palms swaying in the gentle breeze. At times she saw farmers harvesting wheat or guiding oxen, and she wondered whether they realized that above them, the universe itself also labored in cycles as precise as the agriculture that sustained their lives. The temple of Amun-Ra at Karnak was aligned with the rising of the midwinter sun, explained Khayem-Waset, his voice low, as if not to disturb the serenity of the river. Our ancient architects designed every column, every corridor, to capture the exact light of this day. As he spoke, his eyes revealed not only knowledge but devotion. To him, every stone at Karnak was more than architecture. It was prayer turned to stone testimony to the bond between gods and men. When they arrived, the sight struck with overwhelming power. Karnak rose before them, like a colossal monument of stone and mystery, its columns so high they seemed to reach for the sky. The morning sun fell across the carved reliefs, awakening scenes of battles, processions, and sacred rites. Nefertiti lifted her face in awe, as though standing before the very heartbeat of eternity. The air was heavy with the fragrance of sandalwood burning on the altars. The scent mingled with the freshness of stone, still damp with dew, creating a union of the earthly and the celestial. She brushed her fingertips against a hieroglyph etched into the wall, and for a moment she imagined the artisans who, thousands of years before, had carved those lines with precision and faith, as though writing upon the very skin of eternity. Khayem-Waset guided her through the corridors, his hand steady, his steps unhurried, as if each movement was part of a hidden ritual. When the sun rises on the solstice, he whispered with solemnity, its rays pierced through the temple like a golden arrow, cutting the darkness to illuminate the innermost sanctuary where the statue of Amun-Ra rests. The sage's words seemed to echo through the air. Suddenly, the mysterious light that had followed Nefertiti since the beginning of her journey began to shimmer. Like a living flame, it danced along the walls, brushing the hieroglyphs, which sparkled as if inscribed with stardust. Nefertiti stepped back, overcome with reverence and wonder. This is the moment when heaven and earth meet, Khayem-Waset added, his voice filled with emotion. The solar god blesses his temple and renews the energies that sustain life. Nefertiti could barely breathe. She felt pierced by a force greater than she could grasp, as though each ray of light carried into her spirit an ancient calling. The temple was not only stone and shadow, it was a living organism, a heart beating in rhythm with the universe itself. She closed her eyes and let the golden light rest upon her skin, sinking deep into her soul. She imagined the priests of millennia past, kneeling before the same spectacle, and realized that in that instant, she too had become part of the eternal chain of seekers who lifted their eyes to the sun in search of answers. That day, Nefertiti did not simply witness an astronomical phenomenon. She sensed something greater awaiting her, as if the gods, through stone and sunlight, were preparing her for a destiny she had not yet dared to name. With each revelation, her journey drew her not only closer to the celestial mysteries of her ancestors, but also to herself, to an ancient essence inscribed in her very blood, now awakening to the rhythm of light and shadow. Night had descended over Dendera like a velvet veil scattered with diamonds. The air was thick with the sweet fragrance of wild jasmine, and the temple lay in silence, as though the world itself were holding its breath for the unveiling of a secret. At the heart of the sacred library, where painted columns told stories of gods and stars, Khaemweset prepared to share one of the greatest treasures of ancient wisdom. With slow, reverent hands, he unrolled an ancient papyrus, its golden hieroglyphs shimmering under the wavering light of perfumed oil lamps. Shadows cast by the flames danced across the walls, creating the illusion that the celestial figures themselves were moving, alive with the unfolding of the text. "These writings," said the sage, his voice deep and chant-like, "are known as the pyramid texts. They are not merely funerary prayers, but celestial maps. They guide the souls of pharaohs after death, teaching them how to navigate the constellations and find their way to the dwelling place of the gods." Nefertiti leaned over the papyrus, her eyes widening at the complexity of the symbols. There were stars drawn in geometric patterns, sacred boats charting celestial routes, and inscriptions that seemed to pulse as if they carried their own life. Her heart quickened, as though those ancient lines were speaking directly to her soul. "Look here," Khaemweset continued, pointing to a detailed passage. "It describes the journey along the Milky Way, called the Celestial River, with its gateways guarded by star deities. Here is the teaching on how to recognize the sentinel stars, those who watch over the passage of souls. And further on, the supreme point of the journey, arrival at the constellation of Orion, where Osiris, Lord of Eternity, awaits the worthy spirits to grant them rebirth." At the mention of Orion, Nefertiti shivered. It was as though the invisible thread of her earlier discoveries was weaving itself into this moment, revealing that everything was connected in a single sacred mosaic. The mysterious golden light that had followed her since the beginning glowed upon the papyrus, making the hieroglyphs come alive as if written not in ink, but in stardust. "Our ancestors believed," Khaemweset went on reverently, "that to know the stars was as essential as knowing the earth. Life did not end with the final breath. It continued in a journey of ascension. That is why every pharaoh was buried with star maps, so they would not lose their way on the path to eternity." Nefertiti closed her eyes for a moment. In her mind, she began to imagine a newly departed pharaoh, his soul leaving the body, guided by hymns and incantations, ascending into the heavens. She saw him sailing a golden bark along the Milky Way, passing through gateways guarded by deities, facing trials, and receiving aid from the gods. It was more than myth. It felt like a true account of another realm, a map of existence beyond the visible world. A warm breeze slipped through the open window, carrying the moist fragrance of lotus blossoms floating in the temple's canals. The distant trickle of a fountain in the inner courtyard mingled with the rustling of palms, as if nature itself affirmed the truth of those words. Nefertiti drew a deep breath, her heart suspended. For the first time, she understood that Egyptian astronomy was not only science nor merely religion. It was a complete philosophy of existence, a grand vision in which life, death, and the stars were chapters of the same cosmic book. And now she had become a reader of that eternal book. Night fell over the temple with an almost ethereal softness. The eastern sky was clear, and Sirius shone like a solitary diamond, its light crossing centuries of history and mystery. On the sacred terrace, surrounded by the intense fragrance of rose petals scattered across the floor and the sweet balsamic scent of myrrh burning in golden braziers, Kayamwaset guided Nefertiti on a journey through the heart of Egyptian astronomy and mythology. "Sirius is the celestial heart of Isis," murmured the sage, his voice low and reverent, almost as if he were whispering an ancient secret to the universe itself. "When she disappears for 70 days and returns before dawn, it is a sign that our goddess has shed sacred tears. These tears, our ancestors say, will cause the Nile to overflow, renewing the life of all the land." Nefertiti lifted her eyes to the star and felt a shiver run down her spine. There was something hypnotic about that solitary point of light, as if Sirius were aware of every gaze upon it. For a moment she imagined Isis herself, wandering among stars and rivers, pursuing Osiris without ever giving up, crossing invisible worlds to reunite with him in the constellation of Orion. The terrace lay bathed in a calm almost sacred. The soft sound of water flowing through the temple's channels created a continuous, delicate melody, accompanying Kayamwaset's narrative. Shadows danced along the walls, and the scent of flowers mingled with the humid night air, making each breath a ritual of presence and contemplation. Isis searched tirelessly for her beloved Osiris, Kayamwaset continued, his eyes shining with the emotion of one who feels the story pulse within. When she finally found him transformed in the constellation of Orion, her tears of joy became the sacred waters that renew the life of the Nile each year. As he spoke, a mysterious golden light began to dance around Sirius, intensifying its glow, and making the star seem to pulse in harmony with every word. Nefertiti felt a profound emotion, as if touched by destiny itself, a love that transcended death, time, and space. Her heart warmed with the certainty that some truths, however ancient, continue to resonate through eternity. "This is why we observe Sirius with such care and reverence," said Kayamwaset, his voice filled with devotion. "She reminds us that true love transcends all. It connects heaven and earth in an eternal dance of renewal, showing us that even loss is not the end." A gentle breeze swept across the terrace, carrying the sweet, intense fragrance of blooming hibiscus. It caressed Nefertiti's face like a celestial kiss, awakening in her the sense that Isis herself was present, sharing her secret, her strength, and her love. She drew a deep breath and closed her eyes, feeling connected not only to the goddess's story but also to the very light of the cosmos, to the eternity of cycles, and to the ancestral wisdom the Egyptians had inscribed among the stars. Sirius was not merely a star. It was a guardian of secrets, hope, and feelings that could never be erased. Nefertiti opened her eyes and looked again at Kayamwaset, who smiled silently. In that moment, she understood that Egyptian astronomy was not merely science or mythology. It was the story of the soul, of love, and of eternal life, written upon the stars themselves. And for a moment, she felt her own heart beating in synchrony with Sirius. The night breeze drifted gently through the corridors of the Temple of Dendera, carrying the sweet scents of lotus and jasmine growing in the sacred gardens. Perfumed torches cast a flickering light upon walls covered in hieroglyphs, as if each stone bore the memory of centuries of devotion. Kayamwaset led Nefertiti with slow, almost ceremonial steps along the narrow, silent path until they finally arrived at the Chapel of Osiris. "This is our most precious treasure," he said, his voice filled with reverence pointing toward the ceiling. "Here is the circular zodiac, carved by our ancestors to record all they knew about the heavens. Constellations, planets, stars, every detail carefully preserved for eternity." Nefertiti lifted her eyes, her heart swelling with awe. Above her, the ceiling opened into an entire universe. Figures of gods, humans, and animals intertwined in a celestial dance, forming a map of complexity and beauty beyond description. The golden light that had accompanied her seemed to take on a life of its own, traveling across each relief and making them glow as if the constellations themselves were breathing, pulsing with their own energy. "Look," Kayamwaset continued, leaning slightly so she could see better. "Nut, the goddess of the sky, arches over the entire circle, embracing." the stars protecting them like a celestial mother. Here are Orion, Sirius, the Great Bear, each constellation with its name and its role. Nefertiti moved her eyes slowly, absorbing every detail. A shiver of recognition ran through her as she identified symbols she had already learned on her journey through the stars. Each figure seemed to tell its own story, the eternal struggle between light and shadow, life and death, love and renewal. For a moment, time seemed to vanish, and she felt herself floating within the cosmos itself, immersed in ancestral wisdom. "This zodiac is like an eternal book," Khaimwasit said, his voice brimming with pride and emotion. "Future generations will be able to learn about our astronomy simply by looking at this work. Every line is a lesson, every figure a key to understanding the universe." The scent of flowers filled the space, blending with the warmth of the stone and the aroma of the lamp smoke. The flickering light cast shadows that seemed to dance softly across the ceiling, giving the impression that the constellations were slowly moving, breathing as if alive. Nefertiti reached out, wishing to touch the surface, to feel the energy accumulated over countless centuries of observation and devotion. She felt deeply that this was not merely scientific or religious knowledge. It was a complete philosophy, a teaching on the order of the cosmos, on life and death, on the bond between humanity and divinity. Each star carved into the ceiling carried the memory of countless sages, priests, and observers who had gazed at the sky and recorded its mysteries. Nefertiti drew a deep breath, feeling her heart beat in sync with the vastness above her. For the first time, she understood that she was witnessing a work that transcended time. Simultaneously, science, art, and spirituality. The Dendera zodiac was not merely a map of the sky, it was a bridge between the human and the divine, between the present and eternity. And in that moment, Nefertiti knew that her journey through the stars had not only revealed the secrets of the cosmos, it had awakened in her a profound understanding of her own soul, reflected in the constellations, stretching infinitely above her. On a night of absolute silence, when the sky resembled a velvet cloak studded with diamonds, the golden light that always accompanied Nefertiti began to move with an almost conscious intent, tracing ephemeral symbols in the air that shimmered and vanished as if breathing. Khaimwaset remained motionless, absorbing every luminous gesture with a mixture of awe and reverence. His eyes, accustomed to deciphering ancient hieroglyphs and celestial signs, sparkled as he recognized the patterns. These were signals unseen for millennia, ancestral messages meant only for the chosen to interpret. "The stars, they are speaking to us," the sage whispered, his voice trembling with contained emotion. "This light, it is more than magic. It is a messenger of the gods, sent to convey something ancient, something that time itself has almost forgotten." The golden light pulsed gently 3 times, as if measuring the reaction of those who watched, before transforming into a luminous figure reminiscent of the goddess Isis. Her wings spread across the terrace, reflecting light over the stones and perfumed plants that seemed to bow in devotion. The voice that emerged was not just sound, it was melody, it was fragrance, it was wind, caressing the soul of whoever listened. "Nefertiti, chosen guardian of the stars," the apparition spoke, each word floating in the air like notes from an invisible harp. "You carry in your heart the wisdom of 1,000 generations of skywatchers. The time has come to share this sacred knowledge with the world." The terrace became a place between heaven and earth. The golden light spread among the stone columns, turning every leaf and flower into what seemed like liquid silver. The fragrance intensified, now blended with notes of something Nefertiti had never encountered before, an essence that seemed to come from the cosmos itself, penetrating her memory and dreams, awakening recollections of lives she had never lived, yet recognized as her own. "The secrets of the stars," the messenger continued, "were never meant to remain locked within temples. They belong to all, so that every human being may find their path, guided by the light of celestial wisdom." Nefertiti's heart pounded with such intensity that she lost all sense of time. She felt fear and responsibility, but also a deep, almost painful joy upon realizing that her journey extended beyond observing the heavens. She was the bridge between the divine and humanity. Every symbol drawn by the light seemed to awaken ancestral memories within her, revealing that her destiny was intertwined not only with the stars, but with the dreams and paths of all who gazed at the sky seeking answers. And so, amid light, fragrance and celestial melody, Nefertiti understood that her mission would transcend the temple, knowledge, and even her own life. She would be the guardian of the wisdom of the stars, the one capable of turning mystery into a path for all. A shiver ran down her spine, and a silent question arose in her mind. Does each of us carry a secret mission, written in the stars? In that moment, beneath the golden embrace of the goddess Isis, Nefertiti knew she was about to discover the true extent of her destiny, and that the story of the stars would never be the same again. Inspired by the divine vision still shining in her memory, Nefertiti felt a flame of purpose ignite in her heart. She looked at Khaemwaset, her eyes gleaming with determination, and proposed an idea she had long been nurturing: to create a special school, a place where ordinary people could learn to read the skies. The old sage regarded her with a smile that blended approval and quiet pride. He recognized Nefertiti's courage, not only in deciphering ancient wisdom, but in wanting to share it with everyone, even those considered too simple or humble. "We shall build an observatory in the temple gardens," he said, his voice vibrating with restrained excitement. "A place where farmers, craftsmen, and children alike can come to learn how to interpret the messages of the stars." In the months that followed, the temple garden transformed into a true sanctuary of knowledge. Beneath the scorching sun and the night breeze carrying the scent of flowers and the nearby Nile, they crafted simple yet ingenious instruments: gnomons that cast precise shadows to measure the sun, quadrants to track the movement of the stars, and celestial maps, meticulously painted on papyrus, treasures every student could touch and study. Every corner of the garden breathed learning: trees offering shade for daytime observations, fountains reflecting the night sky, and stone paths guiding students through the seasons and constellations. The first class was as diverse as the Nile, though itself, a young fisherman, hands calloused and eyes alert, dreaming of navigating guided by the stars; a meticulous weaver, fascinated by the lunar cycles that could help her create richer colors for her fabrics; and several children of all ages, eyes wide with curiosity, eager to absorb every detail of the sky as if it held the promise of unknown worlds. "See how Sirius twinkles on the horizon," Nefertiti would say, leaning over the maps, her tone soft yet firm. "It warns us that the Nile will soon overflow, and that constellation shaped like a scorpion guides us in the best time to plant barley." The mysterious golden light that always accompanied her pulsed gently during each lesson, illuminating the students' attentive faces, making the stars seem more alive, closer, almost tangible. The garden echoed with laughter and exclamations of discovery. Each student absorbed more than knowledge. They absorbed a sense of belonging to the cosmos. "The knowledge of the stars enriches our lives," Nefertiti said, walking among them, touching a child's shoulder here, adjusting a learner's arm there. "When we understand the cosmos, we understand our place in the world more clearly." The young fisherman gazed at her with silent gratitude, imagining how he could finally sail without fear of storms. The weaver felt her heart swell, seeing how the moon could dance with her dyes. And the children, some for the first time in their lives, realized that the sky was not merely distant and unreachable, but a living story they could read and share. As night deepened, Nefertiti watched the garden bathed in moonlight and starlight, feeling that every gesture, every explanation, every smile was a seed planted in the fertile soil of curiosity. A seed that in time would bloom in restless minds and daring hearts, carrying the knowledge of the stars to generations yet to come. She sighed, a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration, and wondered almost silently, imagine if everyone could learn about the wonders of the night sky. And in that moment, she knew she was beginning something greater than any temple or papyrus, a revolution of knowledge guided by the light of the stars. To celebrate the first year of the School of Stars, Nefertiti prepared something that would transcend any formal lesson, a festival meant to illuminate not only the sky but the hearts of the people. The timing had been chosen with precision. All 36 decanal stars were visible, each ready to reveal its secret and story. The temple and gardens were transformed into a spectacle of color and light, adorned with delicate lanterns mimicking constellations, hung between stone columns and branches of fragrant trees, swaying gently in the night breeze. Today we celebrate not only the stars but also the knowledge we share, Nefertiti announced, her voice firm yet brimming with tenderness. A respectful silence fell over the crowd before applause and murmurs of admiration arose. Entire families crossed the Nile Valley, children bouncing in their parents' arms, craftsmen proudly showing creations inspired by the cosmos. Each decanal star came to life through the students. Small groups enacted ancient stories, dressed in robes that shimmered under the lantern light. Little children, dressed as stars, twirled along the garden paths, fingers reaching for the sky, while musicians played melodies mimicking the rhythms of the constellations. Notes that seemed to float in the air, mingling with the scent of flowers and the gentle sound of the nearby Nile. The first decanal star announces the beginning of the year, the young fisherman explained, his enthusiasm contagious, pointing towards Sirius shining on the horizon. And the 36th decanal star tells us when the cycle completes, renewing all the promises of the stars. Khaimwaset watched silently, eyes glistening with pride. What had once been a quiet garden of learning had transformed into a vibrant center of curiosity and joy. People who until recently had only worked beneath the stars now understood their movements, cycles, and meanings, feeling connected to the universe in ways they had never imagined. The golden light that accompanied Nefertiti danced over the festival like a playful spirit, casting magical reflections on the canal waters and making each lantern appear as an earthly star. The glow illuminated awestruck faces, fascinated eyes following every gesture, every story, every step of the tiny celestial dancers. When we come to know the stars, they become our friends, said a weaver, crouching so her little daughter could see the Big Dipper. They accompany us every night, telling silent stories of ancient wisdom. Nefertiti watched, her heart overflowing with emotion. Every laugh, every gesture of discovery, every curious gaze reinforced the purpose of her efforts. The festival was not just a celebration. It was a living reminder that knowledge could unite people, transcend hierarchies, and inspire generations. As music echoed through the gardens and the stars continued their silent parade across the sky, the young guardian realized she was planting something far greater than herself, a culture of learning, respect, and admiration for the cosmos, an invisible bond connecting all communities under the eternal light of the decanal stars. And for a moment, Nefertiti closed her eyes, absorbing the magic of that night, and thought, how wonderful it would be if all peoples celebrated the wisdom of the stars as we do here, and perhaps one day they will. Years had passed since Nefertiti had opened the doors of her school and shared the wisdom of the stars with the entire community. Khaimwaset's hair, once as black as the desert night, now shone white, like the foam of the Nile reflected in moonlight. His posture, still firm, carried the serenity of a life fully lived, yet also the gentle awareness that his time of teaching was coming to an end. On a night of absolute calm, when the Milky Way stretched majestically across the heavens and the stars seemed to whisper ancestral secrets, he called Nefertiti to the sacred terrace. Every stone radiated memories of long nights of study and contemplation, and the air was heavy with the delicate scent of nocturnal flowers that bloomed only under celestial light. The sound of flowing water from small channels winding through the garden created a soft symphony, a perfect backdrop for what would be the sage's final lesson. "My dear disciple," Khaimwaset said, his voice filled with affection. Trembling, slightly with restrained emotion. "I have taught you everything I know about the stars, but you have discovered something even more valuable. You have learned how to share this wisdom with love and patience." Nefertiti looked at him, feeling a mixture of reverence and gratitude. Every word seemed to touch her heart directly, echoing memories of nights spent studying under the same golden light that had always accompanied her. She felt a pang of sadness, knowing this moment marked the end of a chapter, yet also a serene relief in knowing the legacy would continue. "The stars are eternal," Kaimwaset continued, lifting his gaze toward the familiar constellations that had guided their lives for decades, "but we are merely passing through this world. Our greatest achievement is not in observing or naming stars, but in planting seeds of knowledge that will continue to grow long after we are gone." Respectful silence followed, broken only by the murmur of water and the soft wind brushing the leaves. Nefertiti's eyes filled with tears, not of sorrow but of deep gratitude. She felt the ever-present golden light envelop them both in a warm, almost tangible aura, as if the universe itself were blessing this passing of responsibility. "You will become the new guardian of the stars in this temple," Kaimwaset said, placing a golden star-shaped amulet in Nefertiti's hands. The object seemed to pulse with a gentle energy, reflecting all the lessons, experiences, and stories that had traversed time. "And when your hour comes, you will find another young and curious heart to continue this sacred tradition." At that moment, a shooting star streaked across the sky, leaving a silver trail that seemed to confirm the passing of the legacy. Nefertiti lifted her eyes, sensing that she was part of something far greater than her own life, an eternal lineage of celestial observers, an invisible thread connecting past, present, and future beneath the same star-strewn canopy. She held the amulet close to her chest, feeling the subtle weight of responsibility, yet also the light of hope. Every star now seemed to smile upon her, every constellation pulsed with stories and teachings, and the entire universe seemed to whisper, "Knowledge is eternal, and there will always be someone ready to receive it." As the night deepened, and the sky shimmered with countless points of light, Nefertiti understood that her role was more than teaching. It was to inspire, guide, and sow curiosity in the hearts of those who looked upward with reverence and wonder. And a silent question echoed in her mind. Who will be the next guardian of the stars in our time? Perhaps it is you, now gazing at the night sky, feeling the same curiosity and reverence that has crossed generations. Many years later, when Nefertiti had become a wise and respected figure throughout the Nile Valley, she often sat on the same terrace where she had once learned the secrets of the stars. Her school had grown, and students came from distant lands to study Egyptian astronomy. On an exceptionally clear night, when all the sacred constellations shone in perfect harmony, the mysterious golden light appeared once more. This time it brought a final revelation. "Nefertiti, faithful guardian of the stars," whispered the celestial voice, "your work has taken deep root. The knowledge you have shared will spread through the centuries, inspiring future civilizations to look at the sky with reverence and curiosity." The wise woman observed how her school had transformed into a center of wisdom, where people of all ages learned that, since antiquity, humans had understood how to use the stars to guide their journeys, and that the regular patterns of celestial phenomena allowed them to mark the passage of time. "The stars you studied thousands of years ago," continued the divine voice, "still shine for the children of your students' children. Every person who gazes at Sirius, Orion, or the Milky Way carries a bit of the wisdom you preserved." Nefertiti smiled serenely, understanding that she had fulfilled her mission. The golden light enveloped the entire temple in a final farewell, leaving a profound sense of peace and purpose fulfilled. And so, dear listener, the wisdom of the stars remains alive to this day. Every time we look at the night sky, we connect with Nefertiti, Kemwaset, and all the guardians of the stars who dedicated their lives to uncovering the mysteries of the heavens. When you see Sirius shining on the horizon, remember the sacred tears of Isis. When you behold the constellation Orion, honor the memory of Osiris navigating the celestial waters. And when you contemplate the Milky Way stretching majestically across the firmament, know that you are seeing the same celestial river of Nut that inspired the ancient Egyptians millennia ago, the mysterious golden light that accompanied Nefertiti on her journey still dances among the stars, waiting for other curious hearts eager to learn the secrets of the cosmos. Perhaps on a quiet night, as you gaze at the infinite sky, this special light will dance around you as well. Close your eyes now, breathe deeply, and imagine yourself on the sacred terrace of the Temple of Dendera. Feel the warm breeze scented with lotus flowers, hear the gentle flow of water in the channels, and let the ancient stars whisper in your ears the same stories that enchanted Nefertiti so long ago. The stars wait patiently for you, guarding their millennia-old secrets and wisdom. They will be there tomorrow night, and the next, and on all nights to come, ready to share their eternal light with any heart open to receive their ancient magic. Good night, young guardian of the stars. May your dreams be illuminated by the celestial wisdom of the ancient Egyptians, and may you awaken tomorrow with a heart full of curiosity for the infinite cosmos that embraces us all. The stars of Dendera continue to shine, waiting for you.